And here is the material we'll be looking at. So last week, the first 10 verses were basically a review of all of the families, the children of Jacob, the children of Israel, who have come down to Egypt. And we did learn that they really, really, really multiplied, because we have four different words for multiplying. They were fruitful, and they multiplied, and they spread out, and they filled the land. And then, just in case you didn't get it from the use of four different words, we're told Bim'od Ma'od, really, really, very, very.
Mode.
So Pharaoh, at the end of last week, looked at all these people on his eastern border, which is the border from which the other empires who are working to conquer the world will come from, because Carthage and North Africa and all the countries west of Egypt are not an issue at this time. It's really the Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia area that is the one that would clash with Egypt. And here are these people on his border between the Mesopotamian world and himself. And he's worried that they'll side with the invaders. So he wants to, instead of wooing them or bringing them into his sphere of influence, he decides, I'll just get rid of them now.
Where
And
are they?
who are they? They're the sons
No,
of
where?
Israel.
Where?
They're in Goshen.
Oh,
So they're on the east bank of the Suez Canal, which at that point was still just in blueprint. They're on the east bank of the Nile. Egypt is on the west bank of the Nile. So his first attempt to control this burgeoning population is now in verse 11. Vayasimu alav sare misim lama'an anoto besivlotam vayiven are miskenot lefaro et pitom ve'et Ramses. And again, my translation is such that I pretty much tried to put the English corresponding to the Hebrew in word order, so that
mm-hmm.
you can get to words that are not as familiar to you. Misim, anot, divlot, all of those words, then you can, not that it really matters. The gist of it is he afflicts them with lots of difficult tasks. So Vayasimu, and he put them, alav, on them, Sare misim. Sar is a minister or a prince,
Oh, sorry. Right.
like Sarah, which is a princess. So Sare, and the A ending is a reminder. The A ending tells you that these are words of conjunction in Hebrew smichut. They are words that are connected to each other. Sar, the plural of sar, straight would be sarim, but when you make it ministers of, it becomes Sareh. So Banim is sons, but B'nai, sons of. So B'nai Yisrael, sons of, that A is the of word of a plural. So Sareh Misim, so they're ministers of tasks. So usually translated as taskmasters. Laman Anoto, Besivlotam. So ana, this root is, we know from from the Passover, halachma ania, the bread of affliction. So these were lama'an, in order to afflict him, it, Israel, the people, besivlotam, with their difficulties, with their tough stuff to do. And what did these Israelites do? Vayiven. And again, notice whenever we're talking about the Israel people, the Bnei Israel, the Hebrew uses the singular. alav, on him or on it. Anoto, on him or on it, that is the people. And then vayiven, and he built, or it built, or the conglomerate people built. Are miskenot, so they built cities to hold treasures. Lefarov, so they're building Fort Knoxes of Egypt. And the cities that they built are Pitom and Ramses. So, and Ramses will be a name that is familiar for Egyptian leaders, Ramses. So they built the city of Pitom and Ramses, according to this, which are treasure cities, fortifications. V'cha'asher ya'anu oto, verse 12, ken yirbeh v'chen yifrotz v'yakutzu mipnei b'nei Yisrael. And again, you can check out all of these different words in their order. V'cha'asher, and as that ya'anu, this is back to the anot, same word. And as they were afflicted, or they afflicted Oto, that is the taskmasters afflicted, again singular, him or it, or the people, the generic plural singular, the people, as they were afflicted, this is the big point, ken yirbeh, ken usually we say that means yes, it's really more an emphatic word, like thus. And the sense is the more they afflicted them, the more they yirbeh, the more they multiplied. V'chein yifrotz, the more they spread out, the more they get afflicted, the more they have children.
So is your throat spread out or
Yifrotz is yes.
spread out?
There's
Oh,
a
you wrote.
song, yeah, there's a song Ufarasta.
Yes.
Yama v'kedma tzafona v'negba, and Israel will spread out to the north and the south and the east and the west. So the more they were afflicted, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread out and filled the land.
Hmm.
And so now vayakutsu mipnei b'nei Yisrael, the Egyptians are really embarrassed, mortified. They're trying to keep the population in check, and the more they do to keep them in check, the more they go unchecked. So it was a little bit embarrassing for the taskmasters, for the Egyptians. Verse 13. Vaya'avidu Mitzrayim et b'nei Yisrael b'farech. So again, if you want to check out the words, they're in the order there. So, but Vaya'avidu, the root word eved, which we usually often translate as slave, really, there's no word in slave, in Hebrew for slave, separate from a word for worker or servant.
Mm-hmm.
Eved is any kind of work. Hard work is avodah kasha. But the worship service is also avodah. So any kind of work or service. So vayavidu Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is here the Egypt. Now notice Bnei Yisrael are treated as singular with all the verbs. Mitzrayim is treated as plural.
Mm.
So Egypt caused to serve, to work, Bnei Yisrael. They caused the children of Israel to work. And they had them work in really tough things, in Farech. So they're really making it life difficult for them. And again, you can check, and the last word in that one will be the word that I chose to translate. But farech is not a good thing in oppression,
Aparek.
in an oppressive way. 14.
So,
Yes, question.
so what does Aparek mean?
With oppression or
Oh, with
with,
oppression.
right, with,
Aparek.
heavy weights put on them. Make their life as difficult as possible. 14, Vayimaru et chayehem ba'avodah kasha b'chomer uvilvenim uvechol avodah basadeh et kol avodatam asher avdu bahem bifarech. Again,
Aparek.
and that
Wow.
ending, we know from Goffin and Aretz that ending is a verbal full stop.
Mm. Yeah.
So we get a whole bunch of stuff in verse 14 about, and we keep getting this word avodah, avodah,
Yeah.
avdu, avodatam.
Hmm.
So we're getting this word work, work, work.
Yep.
Almost the sense, again, if this were to be staged, we would have the taskmaster standing over them with whips or whatever, and every other step saying work, work. So we get that sense in the verb, in the verse as it's being read, Vayimaru et chayehem ba'avodah kasha, ba'chomer uvilvenim, uvechol avodah basadeh, et kol avodatam asher avdu bahem befarech.
A
Wow.
question?
Was
The
not a
word,
happy time.
the word just above the number 15,
Yes,
am I remembering that that's more in sound like chol, even though it looks like
exactly. It looks
kal?
like kal, but that's the kol.
I remembered something. One
Et,
thing.
right, et kol avodatam.
Thank you.
And notice that again, there's a hyphen there, a hyphen here. That's those words are read as if they were one word. And so the accent shifts all the way to the end of the dual pair of words. And if we were looking at the trope, when this is chanted, the trope mark, there's no trope mark over the first word that's hyphenated.
Mm.
The trope mark is only at the second word where we get that, again, as if it was one word. And that's one of the ways in which the later punctuators of the Torah got their sense of how to punctuate it was based on the way that they had received the trope, the singing of it. And so these were sung, all the hyphenated words were chanted as if they were one word. So it'd be Vayimaru et chayehem, one word. Ba'avodah kasha, ba'chomer, uvilvenim, uvechol avodah, as if it was one word.
Mm.
Sadeh. Et kol avodatam, as if it was one word. Asher avdu. And notice we're getting a lot of those
Yeah.
hyphens in the eved, in the oviding, in the working words.
Mm.
Vayimaru, the root marar, we know from Passover.
Bitter, bitter,
Right.
bitter.
Maror is the bitter herb. The Hebrew word maruru is embittered.
Embittered.
And so one of the reasons I like to translate as much as possible English words from nouns to verbs with the same word is to indicate that the Hebrew uses that same root word. So vayimaru, in case you didn't get that sense from the previous verses, we want to really make sure you know they embittered their lives. Now here, it's the chayehem is their plural lives. So when they're being overseen by the taskmasters, when they're building the cities, they're Bnei Yisrael, they're one organization, one group. singular verbs. But the bitterness is felt by each individual person, would be the sense of switching it to the plural. They embittered their lives. Ba'avodah kasha, avodah, work, kasha, hard, difficult. So they embittered their words with tough work, difficult work. And then these are building words. Chomer is the caulking material, the mortar, and comes from a root that means the clay or the soil, the what things we put in between the stones. And the livanim, they were bittered with the mortar and with the bricks. Livanim is usually often translated as bricks, but you'll notice that the root is lavan.
White.
So this is the hard white stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the white stones, they didn't use red bricks.
Hmm.
So they were, and this is where we get some of the stories of they made them gather their own bricks and gather their own mortar, not just build with it, but they had to gather it. So they embittered their lives with difficult work on the mortar and the bricks. Uvachal avodah basadeh, and with all the work of the field in the field. Sadeh is field. So all of the field work. So they're not just building the cities, they've got to go out to the fields and gather the materials for the building of the cities. That is now, and by the way, every time we have an et, remember the et tells us we're at a direct object.
Mm-hmm.
So they embittered the lives, but they embittered at kol avodah tam, and they embittered all of their work. So we have to go all the way back to the verb embittered to find out what was the subject of the all their work.
Mm-hmm.
And they embittered et, be with, be with, be with. So we're getting all of our sentence construction from the prepositions, the prefixes. So they embittered their lives with tough work, with brick, mortar, with bricks, with working the fields, and they embittered they embittered kol avodatam, they embittered all of their work. Asher avdu, that they were working. Bahem, with it, in with oppression.
Yeah.
With them, with oppression. So they're doing just about everything they can to make life miserable. And imagine the idea from Pharaoh, where seem to be told, is if they have to spend all their time working the fields, gathering the material, building the buildings, when are they going to have time to make babies? So in a sense, we get this image of how is the population going to be controlled? The initial control
Interesting.
of the population is to not give them any time off to go make babies. And what did the Israelites do? They keep making babies because they keep expanding their territory and their numbers. Verse 15, Vayomer Melech Mitzrayim Lam Yaldot Ha'ivriot Asher Shem Ha'achat Shifra V'Shem Ha'shenit Pua. So verse 15, apparently Melech Mitzrayim, the king of Egypt, realizes that his first solution to the population problem isn't working. So now he calls in Vayomer Melech Mitzrayim and said, the king of Egypt, Melech Mitzrayim, king of Egypt, said, Lam Yaldot. And again, the root word in there is Yeled, which is not the word for child. It's actually the word for having a child.
Mhm.
So Miladot is the ones who are involved in helping the children be born. That is the midwives.
midwives.
And they are Mialdot Ha'ivriot. They are the midwives. They are the Hebrew midwives. And the Ha at La Mialdot and the Ha at Ivriot tells us this is a noun adjective combination. So in Hebrew, we read the adjective after the noun. In English, we read the adjective before the noun. And adjectives in Hebrew and nouns have to agree in number, in person, and in definite article. So here we have all three agreements. Yaldot, plural feminine. Ivriot, plural feminine. So it's not the Yoadot, the midwives of the Hebrews, but is the Hebrew midwives.
Mhm.
But that still doesn't answer the question. The question is, are the Hebrew midwives Egyptian midwives of the Hebrews for the Hebrews, or are they Hebrew midwives for the Hebrew? Are the
Mm,
midwives Hebrews?
mm,
Because we can read Hebrew midwives as being the ones assigned to the Hebrews or the ones from the Hebrews.
mm.
And notice here they're now called Ivriot, Hebrews, not Bnei Israel. So the Mialdot are not identified as being of the Bnei Israel, of the offspring of Jacob, Israel.
Have we seen the word Ivrit before?
We have
In what context?
Abraham. There's a strange story of Abraham where he's called Avraham HaIvri.
Interesting.
But yes, we have not really seen it yet, but we'll see it a lot more in the future. So up until this point, they've been the offspring of Abraham, the offspring of Isaac, the offspring of Jacob, and then they've been the cumulative sons of Jacob, Bnei Israel, but now they're being called Ivriot.
So can
Avar means pass over, cross over, the ones from the other side of the tracks. Yes.
but how would that be constructed if I mean, Bnei Israel is would be like it seems like it would be hard to say this and not use Ivriot and use Bnei Israel since they're not actually men.
Well, they can still be, even the women like Dinah and the wives of the ones who married into the Bnei Israel, because we're going to have later Nashim, wives or women.
Oh, okay.
Yes, if you wanted to make sure that you knew that these were Israelite midwives, we could have said in Hebrew, Hamyaldot mi Bnei Yisrael, the
Oh, okay.
midwives from the children of Israel.
Mm.
If we wanted to make sure that everybody knew they were mi Bnei Yisrael, we would have said mi Bnei Yisrael.
Okay.
By saying Yildot ha'ivriot, when again, as was pointed out, we don't have ivriot or ivrim as a very common language yet in Genesis or Exodus.
That's interesting.
The other question is, notice who's talking. They're being called in front of Melech Mitzrayim. They're being talked to by the king of Egypt. If they are Hebrews, if they're from the community of Bnei Israel, might the king more likely have sent a messenger to them to say to them? Whereas if they're Egyptians assigned to the Hebrews, might it be more likely that the king would call them into his presence as his subjects?
Mm.
But we can also argue the other way. The king wants to make sure they get the message right and calls them in a sense, elevating them and demeaning them at the same time.
Right.
They're all his subjects. Though he's afraid that they don't feel that way, but they're all his subjects.
Well, that becomes the question in the king's mind, what we might say, is are these people on the other side of Goshen my subjects? What are they doing there? Remember, we're told something very special about this king way back at the beginning. He has no idea who Joseph was. So he doesn't know the relationship between the Egyptians and these people on the other side of the tracks, who would be called Ivriot because they're on the other side of the tracks. So Aver HaYarden is the other side of the Jordan River. So these are not his subjects, Egyptians. Maybe they're vassals or subjects or whatever through some treaty, but he doesn't have the treaty because he doesn't know anything about Joseph. So we're left with wonderful places for Midrash.
Yes.
Every time we are not given information we would have liked to have, we get to do Midrash.
Mm.
So we can have a Midrash of these are the Egyptian women, which would really make their story even more amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can make them Hebrew, members of the Hebrew, the Ivriot, the Bnei Israel, in which case we're not surprised by their response and their reaction.
Mm.
So that's verse 15. So the king of Egypt says to these Hebrew midwives, whatever that means, and now instead of being told what the king says, we get this little, by the way, we've got the names of these two women. And how many Israelites by this time are there? Well, according to any kind of internal mathematics of the Torah, there's got to be thousands of them.
Wow.
And there are two midwives for this whole community. So we don't know if these are the head of the schools of midwifery, but for some reason we get their name. And once again, Midrash comes from things that aren't said that we would have liked to be said, and things that are said that we're surprised they're being said. As well as Midrash comes from repunctuating. And that's a different story. But we get this end of verse 15, Asher Shem Ha'achat, and that the name of the one is Shifra, the Shem Hashenit is Puah. And sometimes we're told the name of the one and the name of the one. Sometimes we're told the name of the one and the name of the other. But here we're told the name of the one and the name of the second.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fair amount of biblical Torah work where we get ordinal numbers and cardinal numbers mixed up with each other. In the creation story, we have Yom Echad, day of one, not Yom Rishon, first day. And then the rest are Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, second day, third day. And whenever we get that mix, another place for Midrash. So
Yeah.
why is it the name of the one and the name of the second? So is there a hierarchy? Is this the principal of the school of midwifery, Shifra, and the vice principal, Puah? And we can get a lot of good discussion going about one and second,
Mhm.
beyond which we then have to tell the stories of who are Shifra and Pua and why are they mentioned here in the story? Why are we given their names?
So can I ask a question? Is it possible to determine from those names whether they were Hebrew or Egyptian, like these typical names?
A little bit, but we get Egyptian names that are Hebraicized.
Mm.
So, for example, Moshe is actually a Hebraicized name of the Egyptian name Massa,
Oh,
Oh, well.
like Tutmosa.
Mhm.
So,
Well.
and that had an Egyptian word meaning indicating relationship. But then we're suddenly told later in the text that Moshe was called Moshe because he was Mashach, he was drawn out of, which is taking an Egyptian word and Hebraicizing it.
Mm.
So yes, you can. Egyptologists will tell you whether or not Shifra and Puah have some cognate sound name related to an Egyptian name.
Mm.
They are not necessarily Hebrew names, and later texts and other texts in Torah and in Mesopotamian literature do have Judean names with Yah and Yahu and things like that. But is the Hey at the end the God name Hey, like Avram to Avraham, or is it simply the Hey indicating these are girls' names?
Mm.
So, we take Michael and we make Michael into Michaela. Does that mean that, well, in Michael's case, yes, because the Michael has the God name in it. So let's take David. You take a David and you make it into a Davida, and the simply
Mm.
is feminizing. So is this Shafar, Shifra, Pua,
Mm.
Pua? Is this Egyptian? Is this Hebrew? And the answer, of course, is wonderful because the answer is which way would you like to go? We'll prove it with the name.
Yeah.
They're actually Egyptian. Well, Shifra and Pu are Egyptian words, names. They're B'nai Israel. Well, Shifra and Pu are Hebrew names.
Mm.
And you do get, in modern world, you get Shifras as good Jewish names.
Yes.
Don't run into a lot of Puas. She was second, so that's okay.
Oh.
So they are the midwives, and they are named. Verse 16, Vayomer, and now he says, so now we're being told, we're being reminded, the king has called them in front of them. They're wearing their name tag so he knows which is which, whatever. And now we're reminded he's talking to them. Vayomer, and he says, Biyaled chen et ha'ivriot ureiten al ha'avanim im ben hu v'chamiten oto v'im bat hi v'chaya. And we get
Mm.
all of these nuns at the end that we're not used to because these are feminine
Feminine. Yeah.
verbs.
Ben?
The chen is a feminine ending, the feminine second person plural. Reten and hamiten. So he says, and yaled chen. So in your birthings, et ha'ivriot. So in your birthings, the Hebrew women. And so now he's calling the Bnei Yisrael women Ivriot,
Mhm.
which can therefore be bolster the argument that these midwives were Hebrews,
Mm.
but doesn't necessarily guarantee that.
Now, isn't that what we assume in all the Passover stories?
Of course. But that's because we want to make good things out of our people. But there are some Passover midrashim that make them Egyptian because it says even among the bad guys, there were people who recognized that the bad guys weren't on the right side. But the command is in the birthings of these Hebrew women, as they're being birthed, Re'iten, you will see al ha'avanim, on the stones. So they were using birthing stones. So the women are on the birthing stones. They see this little thing coming out. And by the way, it takes a little time before the one comes out, before you know if it's a boy or a girl. If in fact it comes out normally crowning. So it's not like they are looking at the ultrasound. So the baby is coming out on the birthing stone. Im benhu, and if it's a son, he. So if son it, literally, or if son he, the hamiten, then you will cause it to die. Mate, the root, die. So this is not abortion, this is infanticide. This is even after late-term abortion. When you know it's a boy, then you make it die. How is this supposed to be played out? The Torah tells us nothing. So one can imagine, if one wanted to write a midrash, that the Shifra and Puah say to the king, you're saying you want us to kill these boys after they're born? And the Pharaoh said, no, no, I didn't say that. I'm not advocating for infanticide. I said, Uri'iten al ha'avanim biyaledchen, in their birthing, as they're coming out, as they're still not yet born, which would give, by the way, a biblical bolster to the fact that life doesn't begin until full birth has happened.
Where is the on the stones? Oh, that's the al.
The Evan is stone, ha'avanim are the stones. So they're on a birthing stone. So one can write a midrash. Oh, no, 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 no. I'm not telling you to kill a newborn. Don't take a life. But, as they're coming out, if it happens to be a boy and the umbilical cord happens to get wrapped around its neck, don't free it. Let it become stillborn.
Well, it hasn't taken its breath yet as it's coming out.
Exactly. Don't slap it on the back. Don't cut the cord. Accidentally, the cord just happens to wrap around the baby's neck. I mean, none of this is very pleasant.
No.
Or very happy stuff.
The cord is more apt to wrap around boys because the cord on boys is longer. Seriously. Somebody figured that out fairly recently.
In any case, we're not given a lot of detail here, but it gets pretty gory. And so what, of course, happens when we tell these stories in our religious schools, we just sort of forget this verse. Oh, they're born, and we're going to get next week their excuse back as to why they don't do it, because they're not going to do it. But we don't know that yet.
Is
Hmm.
this verse
The
really,
fir-
is it
Yes.
really not read in Hebrew schools? Are you serious?
This, no, I mean, Hebrew schools don't read. That's why, we were talking, Fran and I were talking about
Yeah.
books that we grew up with called Bible Stories for Little Children,
Yes.
which are a misnamed book because it should be called Biblical Midrash Stories for Little
Yeah.
Children.
Yeah.
So, we get into the plagues. I mean, the plagues are nasty things that happen. And what do? We put frogs all over our table and say, oh, look, fun frogs.
Um,
I want to put out a poster at my next No Kings rally, which is look what happened, especially with what's going on in Portland, which I love.
Yeah.
Say, look what happened to the last king who had a plague of frogs. But yeah, we don't tell the story of, in our stories of the plagues, we don't say, oh yeah, they killed the firstborn and they poisoned the water. They just sent a lot of frogs and we sing the song, frogs here, frogs there, frogs were jumping everywhere, make it a nice, happy plagues.
I think you call these frogs in Exodus Mtifa, actually.
Yes, Antifa, anti-pharaoh.
Mtifa. The frogs are Mtifa.
Ah, no, I think they're anti-fa, but we spell fa now with a PHA.
Yeah, it was fun to see ladies of a certain age walking with that sign
Yeah.
for anti-flag.
In any case, yes, verse 16 is if you really delve into what the verses tell, Pharaoh is telling the midwives to do, and you try to get into the details of how it's supposed to be enacted, it's not a happy time.
Oh,
So if it's a boy, let it strangle on the umbilical cord. But if it's a girl, imbat he, if girl it or she, vachaya, then it will live. Then
wow.
life will happen.
Mm.
Slap it on the back and let it take its first breath rather. Okay, just a quick look at next week's material, where we finally get the opening of the Exodus story in the Y version. And there's not a lot to it. But we're going to see the contrast between the Pharaoh's response to this people and the whole Pharaoh's response to the people. We also have to wonder, before verse 22, what was in the original Y story? Because the whole children, the lineages, the generations, the Pharaoh rose who didn't know Joseph, none of that is reported in the Y story. One hypothesis would be that it was close enough in the two stories that they didn't need to say it twice.
Mm.
But the response to this burgeoning population on the eastern border is different according to the E version than the Y version. So we're continuing the E version until we get to the last verse of the Y version. So this is what you're reading for next week. Vatirena, and here we start getting all of these feminine endings. Vatirena hamyaldot et ha-Elohim v'lo asu ka'asher diber alehen melech Mitzrayim vatichayena et hayeladim. Vayikra melech Mitzrayim lam yaldot vayomer lahen madua asiten hadavar hazeh vatichayena et hayeladim. 19. Vatomarna hamyaldot el paro ki lo chanashim hamitzriot ha'ivriot, ki chayot hena b'terem tavo alehen hamyaledet vayaladu. And again, that vayaladu is read that way because it's a verbal punctuation. Not vayaladu, but vayaladu. You would read it that way to give you the punctuation. Vayetev Elohim lam yaldot, vayirev ha'am, vaya'atzmu me'od, vayihi ki yar'u ham yaldot et ha'elohim, vaya'as lahem matim. And then the other side of the story, Vayitzav Paro l'chol amo lemor, kol haben hayilod hayaora tashlichehuhu, v'chol habat techayun. And
Wow.
again, we usually read this together, and it sounds like the continuation of the story.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, by reading it separately, we see this is a contrast to all the solution that Pharaoh tried in the other story. And we'll look at that next week. Any
Wow.
quick questions, comments on this week's material?
No, not on this week's material, but I just wanted to share that when we talk about Midrash, last night my reading in my daily book, it said that after Abraham left the mountain when he was supposed to sacrifice Isaac, said that he left and went home with his servants,
Yeah.
but that Isaac went and enjoyed Shem and went to yeshiva to study Torah. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Torah wasn't even given yet.
Well, the Torah had been created. Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of Midrash is you can put anything anywhere. But there's another Midrash that he goes and he lives with Ishmael and Hagar.
That would make trouble.
Yeah, well, no, that actually was a
Might solve problems.
that was a reconciliation.
Right.
Well,
They
I know,
both agreed
but
that Dad's not such a good guy. By the way, I just wanted to share one other that I found recently. It's been out for a while, I'm sure, but the idea of what punctuation can do.
Oh.
And that is, if you take the same series of words and ask men to punctuate it, they will punctuate it one way, and women will punctuate it the other way. Men are on the top and women are on the bottom.
Can you read them?
Okay.
So it's the words are woman without her man is nothing.
Hmm.
Men punctuated as women, comma, without her man is nothing.
Oh,
Women punctuated as woman, colon, without her man is nothing.
one of the sentences
Great.
that gives most trouble for Christians is the sentence that says, "Wives, be subject to your husbands." The previous sentences all be subject to Christ.
Right.
And some smart cookie made that the end of a chapter. And the next chapter begins with it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's made a lot of trouble.
And that's what
Man's
punctuation
world.
does.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, what I remember when you were talking about punctuation before, about, like signs, like no trespassing signs
Yeah.
and different things. Yeah, that makes me think of you every time I see a no trespassing sign.
Or things like make sure you put in the comma with let's eat grandma.
She would be very tough to eat.
Yeah, really.